So this all started in 1997 when Miss Kelo decided to purchase her small house, as you can see in that photo, in Fort Trumbull, which is the town next to the city of New London. And Fort Trumbull's not a great area. Um, it's been it was been on the decline for a long time before uh, she bought the house. So she spent months renovating it. The house was actually 107 years old when she bought it, so she spent a long time renovating the house. And then only like a year later, in January of 1998, there was many real estate agents that came to her house and started knocking on the door, offering her lots of money to sell. Um, but she just recently bought the house, so she had no intentions of selling and denied all the offers. Now, a couple agents then, after hearing her denying the offers, came back to her house and warned her that if she weren't to sell, the state or the city of New London would come in and uh, they would force her out of her home due to eminent domain. So, eminent domain is basically the right for the government to take private property for public use, but they need evidence and proof that it's going to be for the betterment of the public. So, for instance, uh, building a park or something like that. So, continuing on some of the facts about this case, I want to talk about why would the city want these residents to move. Now, back in the late 90s, Pfizer decided to open a new facility in the city of New London, which neighbors the residential area where Miss Kelo lives. Um, Now, part of the relocation deal was that Pfizer would work with the city to uh, redevelop the neighborhood by building a new hotel, a new conference center, and elevating their housing to make them nicer for the people who were to work in the facility for Pfizer. This project would cost the city of New London $73 million, which is a large sum. And when Suzette and the 14 other residents within her neighborhood found out, they all decided to sue the city together. Um, the only issue was that the New London Development Corporation already began demolishing 80 homes within their neighborhood, so it'd be hard for them to make a case. So the trial took place at the New London Superior Court, and it began in July of 2001. And just a note, by then, Pfizer had already built their facility and it was already operational. So the Institute for Justice decided to represent Suzette and the 14 others, with the lead lawyer being Scott Bullock. Um, and then in March 2002, the court ruled that some residents could stay, but others had to relocate, which didn't really make sense to Suzette and the 14 others. With this ruling, both sides of the trial decided to appeal to the Connecticut Supreme Court. And then in March 2004, the court ruled that the use of eminent domain was acceptable in this instance. So, with the defense not in agreement of the ruling from the Connecticut Supreme Court, they decided to appeal a second time to the U.S. Supreme Court. And I think it's important to note that eminent domain cases are very uncommonly heard at the U.S. Supreme Court level. But they did agree to hear the case on September 28th, 2004. Oral arguments began in February 2005. And on June 23rd, 2005, the Supreme Court announced that they have sided with the city of New London, which is the same ruling as the Connecticut Supreme Court. Now, it was a close decision, 5-4, and John Paul Stevens argued that it benefits the public by creating jobs and also by lowering unemployment within the area. So with the
So the legal issue here is that the court has to decide whether or not the government had the authority to take private property and transfer that to a private developer for the purpose of economic development. This covers a section of eminent domain, which is asking, does economic development qualify as public use under the Fifth Amendment, with the Fifth Amendment being the government could take private property for the purposes of or that benefit the public, and that they must provide just compensation or just pay for property taken.
For the holding section, the court interpreted the phrase public use in the Fifth Amendment as an encompassing and not just physical access to land or public ownership, but to any use that benefits the public in some way. The court emphasized that the purpose of eminent domain is not always about physical public use, but can also include the broader economic and social goals. The court also found that such economic development, even if the land would ultimately be transferred to private developers, served a public purpose and thus met the public use requirement.
Now I'll be getting into the reasoning portion of this case. Economic justification. The redevelopment plan aimed to improve the local economy through new businesses, higher tax revenue, and job opportunities. Courts typically trust local officials to decide what serves their community's needs. Governments need flexibility to use eminent domain for modern economic challenges. Projects like these could revitalize struggling cities and communities. The court underscored the detailed and comprehensive economic development plan created by the City of New London. The plan was not intended to benefit private parties specifically, but to serve the broader economic interests of the community. The case expanded public use to include economic goals, showing the court's flexibility in adapting the Constitution to modern needs.
For the rule portion of the case, the rule established in Kelo v. City of New London is that the government may take private property and transfer it to another private entity under the Takings Clause of the Fifth Amendment, which provided the taking is for public use. The court broadly interpreted public use, which does not require the property to be used in public directly. Instead, economic development that benefits the public indirectly, such as increased tax revenues, job creation qualifies as public use. The court emphasized that local governments are best positioned to determine what constitutes public benefits for their communities. The decision was highly contentious as it allowed private property to be taken and given to another private party, leading to debates and the limits of eminent domain. The case is significant for its broad interpretations of the Taking Clause of the Fifth Amendment, particularly the definition of public use. The definition affirmed the government's power to use eminent domain to take private property and transfer it to another private party, as long as the taking is part of a comprehensive economic plan that benefits the public indirectly. The Kelo v. City of New London is a landmark case that expanded eminent domain authority, but triggered a national debate on property rights, leading to significant changes in state laws and policies.